All right, welcome back to Buck What You Heard. My name is Gene. You can reach me at Buck What You Heard. You follow me, and of course, you know I'm going to follow you back. Football season is upon us, my friends. Thank God. We've been waiting. Here we are. It feels like 5 years ago that we had that last game versus the Dallas Cowboys was the last time we saw Tom Brady. But here we are. We're ready to kick it off, and I'm joined by a special guest, a guy we've been trying to link up for goodness, I don't know how long. But I'm glad to have him on. My man Tampa Tones from the Buccaneers. How you doing?
Always an honor to talk to you, Gene. Big fan of the show. Excited to finally be on. And yeah, we've been playing cat and mouse a little bit now, but honored to be here, brother, talking something that we love best, Bucks football.
Oh, you already know, man. And it's just so exciting. The anticipation is here. We're turning over a new chapter here. You got a new leader behind. You got a new leader on offense. You got a new play caller on offense. So a lot to look forward to. And the theme here at Buck What You Heard this year is cautiously optimistic. I like what I've seen with the with the play calling from the new offensive coordinator Dave Canales. I like what I've seen. It is preseason, so you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt and just kind of wait to see how it plays out when these games really matter. So to me, I like what I've seen so far, barring any injuries or any catastrophic events. I'm cautiously optimistic. How about you?
I tend to agree with you, Gene. I'd use those words to a T. I'm cautiously optimistic as well. I think it's one of those seasons that a lot of Bucks fans weren't necessarily looking forward to once Brady left. A lot of people were probably having their doubts and whatnot. And, Byron was still
Let's not even
sticking
bring that
around a
guy,
little
that
bit.
fucking guy. Man. Go ahead.
He was there, what, a week to 10 days. It took Bowles a little bit to do evaluation. So that week after the season ended was a lot of doom and gloom for a little bit in the fan base here. But as the offseason went on, I think we've seen a lot of strides being taken. I think we've seen a chance for hope. And yeah, I think there is a bit of optimism to go around now. Like you said, be cautious about it. Don't come in here swinging, expecting Super Bowl and Lombardi trophies to be hoisted. I mean, that's obviously every team's hope at the beginning, but we had a good draft. We had a really good UDFA offseason class, and Dave Canales has provided the fan base with a lot of hope, at least with his play calling so far this preseason. And by the way, not saying, now don't misquote me, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Baker's an upgrade to Brady, but I am going to say it's fresh to see a mobile quarterback in the pocket.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the one thing that we really need to kind of take a step back and look at, if you're comparing the play calling in the preseason last season versus what you have right now, even though it's vanilla, the sequences, the way the plays were called in setting things up, the defenses that I saw in preseason last year were still pinning their ears back and coming hunting the quarterback, regardless of who was under center. Whereas this year, you see a lot of play action. You see bootlegs. You're seeing a lot of things that we haven't seen. That's kind of forcing the opposing defense to really think this through before making some of the moves that they've made. I think it comes down to a couple of things. Execution is going to be huge, and I like the simplicity of a Dave Canales offense. What I've noticed, the biggest thing that I've noticed is players aren't looking lost. Players are going out there playing. They're comfortable. They know what they're supposed to do, and what it comes down to is doing your job. The one thing that really struck me as interesting, you got rookies that were playing fluidly in this offense. And last, I don't, it transcends offensive coordinators in the past. We've had offensive coordinators come in, and there's just been confusion. Oh, I don't understand the play. There's a miscommunication between the quarterback and the wide receiver. And I don't think you saw as much of that in this preseason. You saw some things that needed to get cleaned up. We go back to the Steelers game with a lot of the with a lot of the penalties that we saw, but they've been progressively cleaning this up. You've seen market improvement throughout the preseason, and that's what you look for from your team, a professional team, to have market improvement from the preseason, and you hope that it transcends into the regular season.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think couldn't have said it better. You see the marks, you see the strides, you see a lot of players doing the right things. Rondé Barber was alluding in preseason game 1 to guys like Marquise Watts just knowing what to do, stepping up in the right time. How often do you see 6 UDFAs make a roster? That really goes to show you this team has actually been doing the right things. If you have 6 UDFAs making the roster, a lot of people view that as a bad thing, but that's actually a really good thing. That means you have young blood coming in and
Yeah,
doing things the right way, Gene. These are guys hungry to make plays in the NFL. You got
yeah,
Raheem Jarrett tweeting out the day after he didn't get drafted, pretty much taking it personal, saying,
yeah,
hey, this isn't a great feeling. What did he do? He turned lemons into lemonade to start.
yep,
Trey Palmer did the same thing. A lot of draft critics, not the Bucs draft critics, but a lot of national media draft critics were harsh on the
yeah,
Trey Palmer pick. And ultimately, a lot of people said we overdrafted Yaya Diaby at the end of the day. He's looked great.
yeah.
He's looked
Shutting up
like
the haters.
shutting up the haters. He's looked like a superhero right out of a comic book. So I
Yeah,
think you're absolutely right. I think this
yeah,
team's gravitating to knowledge. I think they're all
hmm
doing the right thing. And I
hmm
think that the youth movement is actually helping because think about it too. Nothing against Akeem Hicks of the world, but a lot of these veterans, what do they not want to do? Listen to coaches in their ear 24/7. And
right.
it seems like what we're learning about Coach Bowles is although he doesn't talk a lot in front of us, it seems like
hmm
behind the scenes he's actually pretty vocal, pretty commanding with his guys. It might not take well to veterans such as an Akeem Hicks, right? But now we bring in these young guys. I'm excited to see what the Kalijah Canseys of the world and really everyone
hmm
in between him and our last of the UDFAs to see what they could do.
Yeah, and folks, I'm going to say this. You'll hear me say this throughout the show. Don't go jumping out the window if the Bucs do not have a good game against the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings, a team that collectively have played together for quite some time. You can't. You have to look for improvement. You have to look at this team as a youth movement. What is this team like? Fifth in the NFL youngest team right now. I think they're sitting at fifth. Is
Yes.
that and I mean, look at New Orleans. New Orleans is the oldest team in the NFL right now. I
Mm.
mean, just putting that in perspective here. So what you have to consider is these young players are really putting it on themselves. And you mentioned a guy that I really love, my man, 50,000 watts is he's gonna ball out, man. I think he's gonna ball out this year. That's my guy right now that I'm excited to see him and see what he can do with live bullets against good talent, and he may be a player that nobody saw coming that we could get in here, kind of like a Trey Palmer. Nobody saw Trey Palmer coming, and I'm excited. These are players that you're excited to see come in, make a name for themselves. And everybody was talking about Scotty Miller, and at the end of the day, Trey Palmer's looking more sexy in that number 10 than Scotty Miller was.
Hmm.
So, so we're going to see, man. I mean, live bullets start coming, and we get to see these guys making plays. Can they step up and make plays? I think they can. I believe they can. I like the consistency. Consistency is a huge word with me. Not regressing throughout the season. I understand injuries are going to occur. It's just a part of the NFL. But you got some young kids out there that are looking to prove themselves, and they weren't happy with where they were picked or the fact they weren't picked. And they've got something to prove to a lot of people. And, where the Buccaneers were chosen to end up at the end of the season, I think that a lot of your veterans are taking that personal as well. So again, they're playing. They're not expected to do a whole lot. So anything the Bucs do right now is going to be a positive. Anything good that they do will be a positive.
Yeah, absolutely, Gene. And I kind of miss the feeling of flying under the radar a little bit the past 3 seasons. Coming into the year, you get all the media buzz, you get the
Mm,
Tom Brady love, you get, reports coming out of nowhere about, Antonio Brown every other day when he was on this team. It's kind of nice reverting back to old times and
yeah,
going under the radar a little bit. It feels like old Bucks days. And ultimately, I think you would agree. Marquise Watts, you mentioned in big number 58. If anyone could take Shaq Barrett's number, I want it to be this guy.
hell
He looks
yeah,
incredibly good in it. And I think Shaq is, you're speaking on veterans' behalf. I think you're absolutely right as well. I think Shaq is pissed off for more reasons than one. It's a tragedy what happened to him this offseason. And I think a
yeah,
lot of critics, remember last season, a lot of people were saying Shaq this, Shaq that before his
mm,
injury. He wasn't looking the
yeah,
same and all that. Then he tore his ACL. I just think he has a lot of force-fed fuel to his fire. I think number 7's in for a really big season as well. So I think you're right on these veterans having big years. And I think something that Jason Light's finally done, well, I think he's done a really good job in the grand scheme of things in GMs. A lot of people want to attack a lot of his picks, which is fine, understandable, deservingly so. Everybody deserves criticisms when they miss. But at the end of the day, he did help bring us the Super Bowl, and he was an essential part in bringing Brady here. Two things he hasn't done great: finding a kicker, although Suck Up was suitable, but he just, you shouldn't be sweating a 40+ yard field goal at this point.
You know what? I'm glad you said that. I'm going to disagree with you there because I'm the president of the Ryan Suckup fan club.
Yeah.
Ryan Suckup made Bucs fans forget that they had kicking problems. If you look at the kickers prior to Ryan Suckup getting here, you were on the edge of your seat every time.
Mm-hmm.
There was an extra point, 3 points, whatever. You were always on the edge of your seat. I know that he can't hit the 50 plus or consistently, but what he did was he kept us in games. He took care of business when we needed him to, and I am glad that he was our kicker, throughout the Brady era. So I'm good with the move, and to kind of go on top of what you were talking about. I love Jason Light. I'm a longtime Bucs fan. I mean, going back to the 80s. I started in the late 70s, but the 80s forward, I can tell you, about the general managers we've had. And to be honest, Rich McKay and Jason Light are the only two general managers in Bucs history that you can mention in the same breath. But I'm going to put Jason Light above Rich McKay because Rich McKay left the Buccaneers in salary cap hell when John Gruden and that idiot Bruce Allen took over, and they were never able to recover from this. Then we ended up with the rock star general manager, Mark Dominic, who didn't help matters anymore. And you look at the list of historically the list of general managers the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have had. There are only two general managers that you can mention, and you can say whatever you want to about him drafting a kicker. You can say whatever you want to about Vernon Hargreaves. You can say whatever you want to about the 2016 draft. I will say this: I would not trade right now. When I look around the NFL right now, I would not trade Jason Light for any of these other general managers, and I'll argue that with anybody. I'm just putting that out there. Me personally, when I look at what he's done, what he's meant to this team, because when he came to Tampa, the cupboard was bare. The cupboard was bare on offensive line, your defensive line, your secondary. Who remembers 2014 when you've got quarterbacks that are playing 20 yards off the ball and getting murdered? Who remembers the offensive line just getting destroyed? And just consider this. I mean, you've had all these different quarterbacks that have come in from Mike Glennon up to to Jameis Winston, Tom Brady, Baker Mayfield, so on and so on. And Mike Evans has consistently gotten 1,000 yards. It doesn't matter what anybody says. When you've got a wide receiver, it doesn't matter who's throwing the ball to him. He gets 1,000 yards in a professional league. I mean, that in itself speaks volumes.
Yeah, and as you alluded to as well, Gene, no matter who's thrown to him, he does that. And he's brought in some of the great names, and everybody says, Tom Brady's the one who brought a lot of these guys here, not Jason Light. Well, I'm going to give you the big three who actually appeared in Tampa before Tom Brady's time. You had a guy by the name of Jason Pierre-Paul. Remember him, the
JPP.
Pro Bowler, the only Pro Bowler we had the year of the Super Bowl. He came via trade with the Giants a year before, 2 years before Brady got here, actually. We traded for him in 2018. So that was a great move by Light. We traded a third-round pick for him. Ndamukong Suh came here a year before Brady got here. Bruce Arians came here a year before Brady got here. That's a Jason Light hire. And then Ryan Jensen came here 3 seasons before Brady got here. I mean, those are 4 elite names. I know I said 3. I added in Bruce Arians at the last minute because he changed the franchise as well. But for everybody says that, hold on, Jason Light was nothing before Brady got here. It's all Tom Brady. That's just false.
I'm going to disagree exactly because I mean, think about this: if Jason Light doesn't draft, if he doesn't fix his free agent woes, I don't think you don't get Bruce Arians here. Bruce Arians is not coming to Tampa to rebuild this team. There's no way in hell he's doing that. And I can promise you, with Bruce Arians being here, Tom Brady is not coming to Tampa to rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
He's coming to win now. Okay. So when you step back and you look at bodies of work, I understand that people want to key in on him on Roberto Aguayo, and that's going to be forever attached to Jason Light. I've overlooked that Super Bowl when they hoisted the Lombardi Trophy in 2020 in Tampa.
Mm-hmm.
That should have erased all that bullshit.
Yeah.
Should have erased it. We shouldn't even be bringing up Roberto Aguayo. It's one of those gambles that didn't pay off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I'm looking at it. It's a gamble that didn't pay off. You know what? Big deal. You move on. Now I want to go around. We look at all 31 other teams,
mm-hmm.
and I want you to tell me of a general manager who's just gotten flawless picks. Everything he picks hits. There's nobody in the NFL that's doing that. Nobody even close. And we look at the benchmark, which was the New England Patriots, and you go back and look at some of their draft picks. Atrocious.
Yeah.
The Green Bay Packers, another team. Look at some of their draft picks throughout the years. Body of work. You compare body of work versus body of work. Atrocious. All I can say is Jason Light, with the amount of money he had to work with this season, putting us in this position is just great. And again, I'll argue that with you. I'll die on that hill right there.
Yeah, and I ultimately agree with you too on even the Ryan Suckup thing. He brought him in. I didn't mean to discredit Suckup necessarily. He was perfect.
And you didn't.
He was perfect for this team in 2020 and 2021. I don't think we really could have had a better, fundamentals kicker for those seasons because you had the classic Tom Brady in those 2 years. You had the methodical Bucs drives where you didn't need an overwhelming field goal. You just needed accuracy.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Ryan Suckup did. I don't even blame him for last season because our offense was so poorly ran that it didn't execute anything. And we were really putting Suckup in harm's way not kicking to his game. So I do agree with you there, Gene. I think Suckup was another good Jason Light ad, and really he played a tremendous role in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, he's that guy that made you forget the Bucs ever had a kicking problem. Because how many other kickers have we had going back to Matt Bryant?
Mm-hmm.
In between those times that, you're sitting on the edge of your seat. It's a gamble if they're going to make it or not. Remember the game against the New England Patriots, Tom Brady and the New England Patriots? We had a horrible kicking problem, and it reared its ugly head. This is a chance to win a game against the GOAT, and the Bucs couldn't come through because their kicker was trash.
I believe that was Thursday Night Football 2017.
Oh, bro. Yeah.
I remember that game.
Yeah.
I was in my apartment soaking it all in. I think we missed 3 field goals and an extra point that game. I could be wrong, but
I cried real tears. I haven't cried like that since Barry Sanders ran on us. So it's been a while, but it was one of those games that I'm like, the Bucs are in the right position. They could actually win this game against Tom Brady and the New England Patriots because New England was wounded at that time. But at the end of the day, our kicker really he pretty much screwed us.
I want to say that was maybe Nick Folk. I'm not sure if that's exactly who it was then, but I do remember at the time, young pup Justin Evans had an interception, and I was ready to roll. But as you alluded to, Gene, those are when you're the Bucs, and this was before the Brady years, especially too. When you have the GOAT on the line like that, you gotta win those types of games, and I think that's something we're gonna do better this year than we did last year. Actually, the games we should have won last year, we made it either way harder than it had to be. Or we made it way more interesting. I was in the crowd in Cleveland on that cold Sunday last season when we blew that lead in overtime. They marched down the field, and David Njoku had that amazing one-hand catch to send it into overtime. This year, I don't see us losing many games that we should win. Last year, that was a big problem. This year, I see that being cleaned up, and I think the Bucs play a lot better because of that this year.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm going to go a step further. I mean, and I've had a lot of people that have kind of reasoned with me because I'm wrong all the time. I don't admit, and I'll be happy to admit I'm wrong. And just, a lot, we've got listeners right now. I'm going on a Baker Mayfield apology tour. If this guy plays like he could potentially play, I've been indifferent about him being here. I'm like, I don't care one way or the other. I just want to see what he does until he goes out there and shows what he can do. But now, I'm kind of excited to see what he does, and I'm happy to admit that I was wrong about the Bucs bringing him in. I'm good with that. And again, this is one of those opportunities. Jason Light. I talked with him when we were in Germany. We were at the game in Germany, and I got an opportunity to talk with Jason Light, an incredible football mind, and I just really I enjoyed our conversation, and we both agreed on a lot of things, which is really I'm proud that I am thinking like that. But all joking aside, Jason Light, he's on the same page with his head coach, and that is huge. He's on the same page with the offensive coordinator. That's important as well. So he's going out there. He's not stroking his ego. He's going out there getting players that he feel like will come in and produce for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and that's important. So when we look at this 53-man roster right now. We look at what we've lost, and we look at how much money he had to work with. If Jason Light can have the Buccaneers in playoff contention in the back end of the season, I will roast anybody on social media that tries to slander this guy, because year in, year out, he's gone out and got the players that he felt like will put this team in a position to win. And a lot of people don't like the picks. I don't know if it goes back to the whole college football rivalry thing, or he's a Gator or he's a Seminole. I'm a University of Kansas guy, KU, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I don't have a dog in the race. I want to see this team win, and that's where I'm at. And so, to me, if Jason Light can go out and you're in salary cap hell like the Saints are every year, and you're able to come in and put together a team that's competitive, and you're able to bring in a coach that can call plays. You've got a defensive coordinator and a defensive minded head coach. I think you're in a real good position right now. And you've got an offensive weapon that you weren't expecting to have. Nobody was talking about Trey Palmer prior to the season starting, and he's a guy that could play a huge part in this team.
Yeah, and I think he's going to, especially in the deep passing game. They're going to at least try and get him involved. He's going to replace a couple of the old dogs that they tried the trick with. Scotty Miller never really quite panned out to be what they hoped he would be. Brashad Perriman, they kept bringing back on these veteran deals, and he was really never that clutch gene, no pun intended, that they hoped he'd be after that Buffalo moment. But when it's all said and done, I think Trey Palmer is going to be one of these guys that a lot of people will be thanking Jason Light for. And last year, you even said it, he's always trying to win. You can't win with some Bucs fans, because when he's not
No.
making moves, they say, oh, why isn't he making more moves? And then when he's making a lot of moves, some people say in hindsight, why'd he do this? Why'd he do that? Last season, to me, he made a lot of the right moves. He brought in Carl Nassib. He brought in
Yeah.
Akeem Hicks. He brought in
Yeah.
Perriman. He brought in Julio Jones. He brought back Leonard Fournette. These were a lot of win now moves, and
Right.
nobody knew that Brady was going to go through the demons he battled last offseason. And, not blaming him. It was a plethora of things. Donovan Smith, bad play, Byron Leftwich, vanilla play calling. Nobody could have guessed
he
all
was
that.
he was making preseason call. He was preseason play calling in the regular season.
Exactly. Nobody could have predicted all those circumstances that led to quite a disappointing year, although we won the division. So I think that Jason Light, even in the bad times and his quote unquote darkest of days, I think he's tried to bring light to the table. Like, it's not his fault Djax was a flop. He's tried a lot over the years, and it's good to see that to me, this draft class is looking pretty dang prominent. I know we got to put the pen to paper and the cleats to the gridiron, but I'm very happy to see what he did this offseason on a very tight budget, very constructed budget. To me, he put together a team that's suitable of maybe not winning the NFC South, but at the very least competing for the NFC South.
100%, man. And when you look at the schedule this year, I don't know about regular Buck, your average Buck fan. I'm excited about this season, because I feel like these are all winnable games for the Bucks. I don't see a game where the Bucks are just like going to go out and get their ass handed to them. I think the Bucs can potentially win. And this team goes how Baker Mayfield drives it. He's behind the wheel, and if we can get consistency out of this guy, low turnovers, and on the defensive side of the ball, do your fucking job. That's all you got to do. Take care of your business. Don't worry about what the guy next to you is doing. Take care of your fucking business. Get home with 4, and I promise you, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to win some games that pundits do not believe they can win.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to stand. I'm going to stand by that right there. If you've got a team and everybody's comfortable with their position, everybody's taking care of their assignments, I don't see Tampa losing games that they're going to have some losses, but I really believe that there are some games that the Bucs are going to win that people aren't expecting them to win.
No, and I agree with you, Gene. And even some of their prime time games that seem difficult on the surface, and they surely are difficult, don't get me wrong.
100%.
You got the Eagles on Monday night. That's going to be a high energy game because you got Rondé Barber getting inducted into the Hall of Fame that night. You got emotions high that night. So don't discredit them just yet there. And then Thursday night in Buffalo, I get it's in Buffalo. I get it's a primetime game, but Thursday night football, you truly never know what happens. I'm glad to have the Eagles on Monday Night Football for Rondé Barber's induction and Buffalo on Thursday Night Football, opposed to having him at 1 o'clock kickoff on a Sunday where, those teams come in fully rested, fully healthy, and we're not really running on emotions. I do think there's difficult games on the schedule, but
I think that Eagles game is pretty difficult, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think it's very difficult, but I am hoping that Rondé gives them a little bit of a jolt, a little bit of a spark, and a little bit of a reason to play tough. It is going to be hard, but anything could happen, especially in week 3. I'll actually be at that game, so I'm looking forward to being there. But, yeah, it's not going to be easy. But I agree with you. Looking in the grand scheme of the schedule, I mean, we played the NFC South twice.
Right.
We played the NFC North.
Right.
And we played the AFC South. Those are 6, 10, 14 winnable games right off the bat.
100%. And again, this is going. I think this. I'm not taking anything away from any team that we face. I promise I'm not. I'm just saying that there's enough talent on this team to do some big things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I'm saying. And it's going to come down to everybody doing their job and the head coach taking care of business when he's supposed to. And that's all going to factor together.
Yeah.
And that at the end of the day is going to kind of give you a barometer on where Tampa is. Because I can promise you, regardless of what people are saying, Todd Bowles is being looked at. His job is being looked at right now. What he does, he's got, and unfortunately, we live in a microwave era where it's you got to get it done yesterday in order to prove yourself. But I think with Todd Bowles, I think he's got his guy. I love how they methodically went through and got the offensive coordinator that he felt that, he could work with. And, he wouldn't have to put a lot of effort into this because this guy's going out here making play calls and taking care of business. One thing that I've noticed too with all this is that last year when you watched Todd Bowles, he took a lot of he didn't take as many chances as I thought he should have.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always question his coaching, but if you've got an incompetent offensive coordinator, I mean, what the hell can you do? This is your job. I mean, at the end of the day, you're putting your stamp on offensive play calling that could put this team in a position to win or lose. And he's taking responsibility as opposed to laying it on this offensive coordinator moron that we had.
Yeah, and Byron, the thing about Byron, I met him a couple times, and even meeting him in person, he is a nice guy, but he just kind of has that stigma to him where he thinks he knows a little bit more than everyone else.
You saw that in the press conferences.
Yes.
This is a guy that's scoffing at the media. He's like, you like you motherfuckers don't know shit.
Right.
I'm the only guy that knows anything. But it and this is so funny. I'm watching a game with my wife. My wife does not watch football, period. She was calling plays that Byron was running. And if that doesn't put a stamp on all of it, that somebody who doesn't watch football knows what's going on. She understood his offense, and I'm to this day I'm still struggling with that.
She should have been the OC, it seems like. I think
Exactly.
she could have asked Madden and picked better play calls
She's
than Byron.
because we're watching the game. She's like, oh, he's gonna run the ball, and damned if he didn't run the ball.
Yeah, and that was the problem. We just seen that too much last year. It'd be first down and 10 yards. You run, you get like
Mhm.
half a yard. Same thing on the next drive. Same thing on the next drive. Really puts your offense in bad plays. In the 3 preseason games alone, we've seen offensive coordinator Dave Canales do
Mhm.
end arounds to the tight end, Cade Otton. We've seen him use guys like Kalen Geiger, no longer with the Bucs, obviously, but Devin
That
Tompkins.
naked bootleg was nice.
Yeah, exactly. Naked bootlegs and rollouts, and you hit Tompkins and Geiger in space on bootlegs. You do end arounds to Otten. You do Rashad White. You get him in space. You didn't see that with Byron last year.
Mhm.
All you seen
Yeah.
was 1 yard and a cloud of dust up the middle. And sadly, he overused Leonard Fournette. I know Lenny F may have been a little out of shape or whatever last offseason as well. But at the same
They didn't
token,
do him any favors, though. That's the whole thing. They did not do him any favors.
right, because remember the first 3 weeks of last season, he was actually pretty dang productive, Leonard
Yeah.
Fournette, and that's when the Bucs started 3-0, and they started out very good, and a lot of people were saying, "Oh, it's going to be the same old Bucs." Then we went on that crash curve because the play calling was so vanilla, and that's ultimately why Byron not only is out of Tampa, but there's a reason why he didn't get hired anywhere.
Yeah. And maybe labor ready, but I don't know. I'd have to research that. But that guy, again, I had my questions about Byron. I honestly believe the Super Bowl year was a three-way marriage between Byron, Tom, and Bruce Arians. I don't think that I don't think you could put the light on just one of these people as to what they did to make this team more productive and put them in a position to win games. I really don't. But at the end of the day, I do not believe that Byron played as huge a part into this. I know that there were a lot of teams that were looking at him as an offensive coordinator.
Hmm.
There were people looking at him for a head coach position. But at the end of the day, I don't know what happened, but this guy has no business, pro wise, running a team. He just doesn't. I could see him as maybe possibly a quarterback's coach. I could see that. That legitimately makes sense.
Hmm.
But ultimately, I just don't see how you could put him in a position to play calls or to make play calls because, I mean, his mentality goes back to the early 2000s, mid
Hmm.
2000s, when, the game was a little bit different. But I don't think I don't think his mindset, he's adjusted to what we're seeing right now, which is a wide open offense. Um, being a conservative play caller is not going to win you any games.
No, and I think the two people who helped him win some games last year, especially, was Brady, and a couple of years before that was Bruce Arians. When he got,
100%.
when Bruce would get tired on the sideline and said, "What the heck you doing? Air the ball out a little more and see what happens." I mean, way rather have a 30 interception season out of Jameis than the offense we've seen last year. At least we were trying to push the ball downfield and whatnot.
Yeah.
Last year was just something that I hope to never see again as a Bucs fan. Reminded me of the days where Greg Olson was their offensive coordinator, and those were some dark days. I do agree with you though, Gene. I think Byron would make a heck of a quarterbacks coach. I think he'd be a tremendous one because he'd
Mhm,
have time to break down, sit down with the quarterback,
mhm,
and really go over what he knows best. And that's the integral part of the quarterback position where he screwed up. And
mhm.
this should be a life lesson to a lot is when you have an opportunity in life, you should take it. Ultimately, seemingly, he passed on the Jacksonville head coaching opportunity. And now, sadly,
And we got stuck with him.
yep, we got stuck with him. And Byron, I hope you're doing well because I don't hate you. I just hope you get better as a coach, buddy. That's all.
When I look at Byron, he's a guy that, like I said, I mean, when you look at Raheem Morris, I think Raheem Morris it was too early for him to be a head coach. I could see Raheem Morris as a head coach right now. I think that
Hmm.
he's understood the speed of the NFL game. He's been around a lot of great minds to put himself in a position where he should have an opportunity to coach. At the time that he got the position he shouldn't have, that's like Lord Byron. I think Byron really needs to like take a step back and readjust his thinking on how to call plays. And I think that would put him in, because when you've got players, when you've got fans, and I love NFL Twitter, I love Buccaneers Twitter. Regardless of how toxic these assholes are at times, I love them. I wouldn't want to be a part of any other fan base. I look at that because, like, I follow the Falcons, I follow Miami, I follow New York, the New York Giants. I've got some friends that are Giants fans. Follow the Jets, just certain teams. But when I look at this team,
Mm-hmm.
top to bottom, I love the fan base. I really do. And I wouldn't trade this fan base for any other fan base. I know I talk shit on them at times, but I love them. I still love them the same. Just like, it's family. That's just like a dysfunctional family at Thanksgiving. I still
Right.
love you guys, regardless of how much of a fucking idiot you are. I still love you no matter what. Pass the cranberry sauce.
Yeah, for real though, I couldn't agree with you more, Gene. There's guys and gals that, one day on Twitter I see one of the, or whatever the heck it's called now, but I'll see one of their posts and it'll be like, oh, I'll think it's the stupidest thing in the world, but then the next week we're talking Bucks ball, and that's just the beauty of it, right? I mean, I agree with you. I see some other fan bases. I'm in Chicago. I see Bears Twitter. And they melt down at the snap of a
Oh
finger
my
as well.
God, man. You know what gets me about, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get on a tangent here because we do face the Bears. They were a division rival. Fuck you, Bears, this year, because we're rehashing this whole division rivalry again. But you would think that the Bears had won like 15 Super Bowls. I swear to God, when you
Mhm.
talk to these guys and you listen to them, they're like, "Oh yeah, we've done this and this and this." You know what? You had a good quarterback at the time. You had an amazing defense, a phenomenal defense, and you had one of the greatest running backs ever. And you put together a Super Bowl win. That's it. That's it. And you haven't done anything since then. And that's all you've done. And you had a suspect head coach take you
Mhm.
to a Super Bowl, but that's it. That you haven't done anything. And so and I totally get what you're saying with that. There are some guys, and hopefully they're watching. I hope you guys are watching. But they I think they changed the name of their podcast. I don't remember what it is now, but they always look down on the Bucks whenever they face the Bucks. They look down on the Bucks, but at the end of the day, man, this Chicago team, they need to overhaul. And
Yeah,
that's just what it is.
yeah, they surely do. And like you said, it is what it is. They're trying to get there. They're trying to get there. It's been years and years of just bad football. And I think the Saints are ultimately heading down that path as well. I know a lot of people are high on the Saints this year, but to me, Dennis Allen and that he's just not a very good head coach, right? You look at
He's
Dennis
not.
Allen's track record, whether it's been in New Orleans, whether it's been in Oakland, he's been pretty brutal. And then you look around New Orleans, and Michael Thomas hasn't been healthy in forever.
But he's throwing
Uh,
slants. He's still running slants.
yeah, still running slants. I mean, I'll be sleeping the night. He's still running slants. Alvin Kamara, obviously, he's suspended, although it's not as long as it should have been. We all
Yeah,
know, even when you're suspended only a handful of games, when you come back, it takes a couple weeks to get going. And then bringing in an over the hill guy like Jimmy Graham, who hasn't done anything in quite some time
yeah.
now. And guys like Cam Jordan have looked older and older as the years go. I think New Orleans isn't far away from being completely honest with their cap purgatory too. I think they could be one of those franchises that are broken for a handful of years coming up in the grand scheme of things. I mean, nothing against Derek Carr. I was a fan of his at one point in time as well, but look at it like this. He had Devontae Adams last season, Hunter Renfrow last season, Darren Waller, and the best runner in the league in Josh Jacobs. And what did that do? Obviously, Josh McDaniels not my cup of tea at head coach, but to me, Derek Carr should have had a successful year last year.
He
He
should have
didn't.
thrived. He should have thrived with that offense.
And now he goes to an offense that's worse with a lot more question marks of injuries, suspensions, and head coaches. I think the Saints aren't going to be as pretty of a pie as people are saying.
Yeah, and I think the bright spot is Chris Olave. And I think that's what they're hinging everything on is Chris Olave. But I'm gonna tell you right now, when you look at the New Orleans Saints, from the time they won the Super Bowl until now, they've had every single opportunity handed to them, and they haven't been able to do anything with it. They just haven't. I mean, and you go out and you bet the farm, and you put yourself in salary cap hell, and you bring all these players in, and you get all these superstars that don't pan out because they don't have any supporting cast around them. And again, this is just consistent since they won the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So when I've talked to Saints fans, and they always deflect on how trash the Buccaneers are because we won 2 Super Bowls in like 20 years or whatever. But at the end of the day, they were fortunate. If they didn't have that trick play at the beginning of the second half, I promise you the Colts would have whooped that ass. But it was just, I don't know what it was, but just after that point where they got that onside kick at the beginning of the second half, it just put them on their heels, and the Colts were not the same team. But to say that the Colts won that Super Bowl, I'm not taking anything away from them. But after that, they've had opportunity. They had a chance. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a team they kicked the shit out of, I don't know how many times.
Mm-hmm.
They humiliated and embarrassed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They have them in the playoffs in 2020. You got them in the playoffs in your house. And you know what happened? They lost. They choked. They look bad. But they've got every excuse in the world they've got. They can have all that. And I think fans need to reflect. They need to take a look at this team as a whole. Look, and you've heard me say body of work. Look at their body of work from the time they won the Super Bowl up until the time they lost in the playoffs against the Buccaneers, a team that they've owned, and put it all together and say, what did we do? What if we haven't accomplished anything?
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, NFC South championships, fuck that shit. Once you've hoisted the Lombardi, that's what you want. I don't care about the NFC South, man. Miss me with that shit. You need to get to the Super Bowl, and they've had an opportunity. The Minnesota Miracle, against the Rams, that pass interference. You know what? They should have been running the score up on the Rams throughout that whole game. So I don't want to hear about that last play, the pass interference. The Saints had a better quality team, and they couldn't get it done. So I don't want to hear about that. So ultimately, when I look at the Saints, the opportunities they've had, I mean, the Seahawks went out and whooped that ass too. And you look at all the missed opportunities they've had, and what do they have to show for it?
Yeah, the Saints, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Gene. They've had all these opportunities. I mean, they literally got it put on a platter, against like the Colts at Super Bowl. Yes, Hank Baskett, he must have been hanging out with Kendra Wilkinson too much at halftime or eating buttery biscuits or something like that. Because Buddy literally let that one get away from him, and they really got lucky with that one. Then, as you said, the Minnesota Miracle. How do you
that was so beautiful. I watch it all the time when I'm depressed. I'll go put that on.
It really does make you happy. And, it's really embarrassing, too, when they had that moment in Madden with Greg Jennings and a broken leg in the Gumby viral video as well. So they've had their chances to be on the good side of history. And whether it's Madden or real life, they just haven't been able to capitalize.
Yeah. And Donnie Pepin, he's talking about Drew Brees was a bum. I'm not going to disrespect Drew Brees like that. I think at that game against the Bucs at the end of in the playoffs, I mean, he did have a noodle arm. He did.
Yeah,
the Bucs took care of business. I don't care what anybody says. You can say what if about any of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Bucs came in to New Orleans. It wasn't in Ray J. It was in New Orleans. They came in, went to the refrigerator, made themselves a sandwich, made themselves at home, won that game, and went on to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and
you know what was standing in their way? The New Orleans Saints. And you know what? They walked over them assholes and went ahead and took care of business. Now I'm going to say this. in the grand scheme, the NFC South, I hate the Atlanta Falcons. Hate them. Hate them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have the same beef with the New Orleans Saints. But when I hear these guys talking about, Tampa this, Tampa that, but they haven't done anything, I just kind of have to give them the kind of side eye because I'm like, you guys had I don't know how many opportunities to go to the Super Bowl. Go ahead and get you another, fill up that Lombardi Trophy case, but you didn't do it. You
Yeah,
got one.
they just need more banners made, I guess, for NFC South titles. That's all their fans on Twitter care about, seemingly, Gene. And I
Yeah,
think you're alluding to something great. Yeah, we literally beat Drew Brees on the road, and the Saints were built up as this team that we couldn't get over the hump against. We went on the road and beat Brees, then we beat Aaron Rodgers, then we beat Mahomes. Those are three Hall of Fame quarterbacks that we were able to
easily.
take down. And for Saints fans to continue to say, they always taint that Super Bowl. They try and call it a COVID Super Bowl, although COVID really didn't affect the Bucs that year in terms of making life easier on them. If anything, life was harder on the Bucs that season. And
They were in fucking Saint. They were in New Orleans.
exactly.
They were in New Orleans. I don't want to hear any Saints fans have nothing to say of structure as far as I'm concerned. The Bucs went to New Orleans. New Orleans, stand your ground. Win that game. Defend everything and win that game.
Mm-hmm.
No, it just wasn't in them.
And although it wasn't a lot of fans, they still had fans in the stands as well, and they were able to pump in noise. So I don't want to hear anything about the COVID Bowl. As far as that Super Bowl run, though, tremendous. And I know it's been our second, and the Saints can't say the same thing for the past, 20, 21 years or so. They had that one, and that's all they've got. And so,
Yeah.
to be honest, in the NFC South, yes, we've seen the Falcons make the Super Bowl. We've seen the Panthers make the Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, no one's had the amount of success that Jason Light and the Bucs in general have had over the past 2 decades.
Winless.
Endless success, and it's really amazing, and it's incredible because we're in Tampa Bay as well. We're not one of those. And every team in football obviously has money to make moves, but you look at Atlanta and you look at New Orleans, and you expect people wanting to go to those places more so. But Tampa's really built themselves as a football town more so than those other two. And I really think it's starting to pay dividends year over year. Look at small example, Gene. Look at J.J. Russell. J.C. Allen reported that he could have signed to other people's rosters elsewhere. What did he do? He declined to sign with those rosters and came back to the Bucs practice squad this season, just yesterday or today. And that goes to show a lot of strides on how this Bucs organization has came to fruition and how they're really becoming. And to me, I think Jason Light, I think Bruce Arians, and I think Tom Brady on changing the culture for this Bucs team over the past 5 years or so. Because really, to me now, we're never going to see that level. We might see some bad seasons. We might see some ugly seasons, but we're never going to be the complete yucks again to me. And really, that's a beautiful thing.
That's important to talk about right there, and I love this. This is where the Buccaneers are. I think the culture has changed, again, I have to go back to Jason Light, and it's funny story, real quick. I'm gonna segue off here, but I'll get back to it in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I've had about, let's say, like 10 followers since I've been doing Buck What You Heard, since Jason Light has been the general manager, that have said, I am not listening to you anymore because you're always caping for Jason Light. And I'm good with that. I'm good with that because this guy, when he got us Super Bowl, when he got the Buccaneers, when he brought that Lombardi Trophy to Tampa, when they had the boat parade, when he had all these people, I mean, we're in a dark time in United States history, and Tampa is just having a party.
Literally.
Having a party. We are literally having a party. You got a boat parade out there, and nobody else in the NFL does this but the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa's got that boat parade going on. I mean, whether it's hockey or whether it's the NFL, that's what we've got. But I will say this, just what he's done for this organization, for this team, for this town. I mean, you can't put a stamp on it. You really can't. And I think that this season, again, cautiously optimistic, I think it's going to be another season where we shut up the all the people that are talking down on the Bucks. I mean, I heard somebody what I was watching some podcast, it was a New York Giants podcast, and they had Tampa in last place.
Mm.
Last
And
place. So,
I,
sir, just think about that. So right now, you got people that are all around the NFL. They're looking at all the teams in the NFC South. They've said that New Orleans is going to be better than Tampa. Atlanta is going to be better than Tampa. Carolina is going to be better than Tampa. The little fellow over there in Carolina, who he can't see over the offensive line. It'll be interesting to see what the little guy does. But at the end of the day, I think Tampa has a lot to prove, and I am so invested in Tampa that I believe that this team is going to silence a lot of critics this year. And that's all I'm going to say.
I could agree more with you, Gene. And the fact of the matter is, too, Carolina, yeah, they're getting love because they have the little fellas you alluded to, and everybody loves the number one pick. They fall in love with these early quarterbacks, but what did they do in the process? They traded his number one weapon in DJ Moore, and really, they don't really have wide receiver star power at this time to be something to really help him grow, in my opinion. And when you look at it in the standpoint of, everybody's got better quarterbacks in the Bucks in the division, I just totally disagree. And I think at the end of the day, no matter what happens this year, whether we're good, we're mediocre, or we're bad, we're going to put ourselves in a position to get at least a quarterback somewhat, and I'll say somewhat, of the future, because you look at the Bucks, Baker Mayfield's only 28. So say if he balls out this year, he surprises a lot of people, he goes out there, you're probably going to give him a Daniel Jones, Geno Smith, maybe not to that extent, but you're probably going to bring him back if we make the playoffs. And if he has
100%.
if he has a good year, not a lot of turnovers, you're going to bring him back. He'll only be 29. Say if he craps a bed, you got to turn to a guy like Kyle Trask. He's only 25. So maybe you catch lightning in a bottle with Trask, and maybe he's something. Then you got a 25-year-old quarterback. And I don't think this will happen, but just say the Bucks bottom out completely. As you alluded to, they'll never tank, because tanking means Todd Bowles probably never has an NFL head coaching opportunity.
Yeah, he'll never get it. He'll never. This is his last chance. He'll never get another opportunity in the NFL, considering you've got Mike Evans and you've got Chris Godwin as your wide receiver core.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at this Shaq Barrett and Vita Vea, and you've got some of these other players on the defensive side of the ball. I can promise you that general managers are going to look at this and say, hey, this guy couldn't handle a team that had this amount of talent on it. And Levante David, excuse me, God bless Levante David. You've got all this talent on the defensive side of the ball. If you put yourself in a position where you're the number one overall pick, you deserve to get fucking fired.
More so than that, yeah, I agree with all that and more, Gene. I mean, you look around this team, you have emerging guys who are literally on top of all those top stars in the league already. You have budding stars who are already really good players, like Tristan Wirfs, Antoine Winfield Jr. These are probably two stalwarts who this team should have for a long time. You mentioned Devin White as well. Or
hey, real quick, I'm going to throw this out here. This is my hot take. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is going to blow up this year. I'm putting this out here. It's my hot take. I don't do hot takes very often, but JTS, I feel like JTS has gotten the speed of the game, and he's gotten this close on so many occasions. I feel like JTS is going to have an amazing season this year. That's my guy that I'm looking at. And again, I'm happy to admit I'm wrong at the end of the season, but I like what JTS put together. I like the consistency throughout the preseason. I think this guy carries that into the regular season. Joe Tryon-Shoyinka is a guy to look out for.
I agree with you there, and I think, as you said, he's looked pretty good this offseason. Against the Jets that week in practice, it was reported he looked really good. He got after the quarterback in practices there. And then
Smoking them
last
like Cohibas.
yeah, literally.
Smoking them. Yeah. That's my guy right there, man. I mean, I love the JTS pick since day one. A lot of you got a bunch of haters that wanted somebody from Florida State or to come in here or Florida, wherever the hell these people wanted these people to come in. But I really believe that this guy, because of the situation, he didn't play during the COVID season. He
Mhm.
came in a year late. He's gathering he's understanding the speed of the game. I really believe JTS is going to step up, and show out this year,
And
barring injury.
people forget too. You bring up a great point, Gene. He sat out his last year of college during the COVID thing. So imagine that you're a rookie, you're coming into the NFL, you have all these big expectations in the first round, and on top of that, by the way, we're going to ask you to do things different than you did in college in this defensive scheme a little bit. And by the way, you haven't played football in probably 14 calendar months now as well. So,
Exactly.
last year was essentially his rookie year almost in theory. Last year was, and
Yeah,
we've
because they
seen,
were rotating him in the year before.
hmm and we've seen his growing pains, but I don't think there's a bigger freak of nature. I mean, his body shape is great, his physique is great, and he gets to the quarterback. I think you're absolutely right. I think he's going to have a nice season.
Yeah. My thing is, and I'm not, listen, I'm going to preface what I'm about to say. I'm not comparing JTS to anybody else in the NFL, but his body type reminds me of Simeon Rice.
Hmm
The way he contorts his body to get around that edge to get to the quarterback. I feel like he's been close, but I think this season he totally understands the game. I really feel like JTS is going to have a great season this year. A lot of people have written him off as a bust, and again, my thing is 3 years minimum. 3 years minimum before you even talking about bust. But what we've seen from JTS is improvement. I like what I've seen from him. And there have been times where he's been washed out of plays, but I think he's learned from that and I think he's gotten better. I saw that a couple of times on game film against the Steelers, where, there were times where he was washed out of plays. But at the same time, I think he's adjusted and come back in, gotten pressure on the quarterback. This is a guy that you need to be looking for.
And I
You need to
agree
be looking
with
for.
you. He's really made strides, and I'm excited. And I think for the same reason as you just said, I mean, so many people nowadays in the NFL, they see coaches fired after a year. They see guys like Rosen bench after the year. They think that's normal. That is not normal stuff. That's abnormal. I know we live in a day and age where word circulates quick and
Mhm.
kids get wacky ideas based on video games and whatnot. But just because a guy doesn't necessarily get double digit sacks in his first year, just because Kate Otten doesn't get 800 yards receiving in his rookie season, just because Jake Camarda botches a punt every once in a while, doesn't
Mhm.
mean these young kids can't play or they don't have the
Right.
talent. And Logan Hall, too, right? I think this kid has the potential to be a good player. I think he has a big body. We got to remember, he was a very, very big labeled project when we made that pick. A lot of
Yeah.
people said he has a lot of raw potential, but it's raw, right? You got to
Mhm.
really shape him up, coach him up. And we've seen that last year. We've seen his flaws last year. We've seen his rawness last year. I wouldn't rule out a guy like Logan Hall yet either. And people are acting like he's in year 4. He's only going into year 2. I'm not saying he's going to be a
That's
superstar.
my point right there, man. I mean, yeah, I've been critical, and I say this only because I didn't understand the pick. I
I
didn't
agree.
understand. I didn't understand why Logan Hall was picked where he was and how he would factor into this defense. And then when you see him play, and you're like, man, there's a lot to work on here. But then you look back at players like Sheldon Rankins, who played for the Saints, and you knew that Sheldon Rankins was going to be a project player. But
Hmm
then when it was all said and done, Sheldon Rankins goes to another team and makes a boatload of money, and he's making a difference with the new team that he's with. So again, I sort of understand it. It's just when I look at his film, when I look at what he's done in college, I just don't see what coaches see. But again, at the same time, I am not a coach. I am not a general manager. I can't justify what I've seen. So again, I just kind of have to let it play out. I'm not gonna disrespect this kid because he's going out there playing at a high level. And I don't know how many other players that have been like cut from NFL teams don't ever get another opportunity. This is a guy who's getting a chance to grow with this team and getting a chance to contribute. So, despite what my personal opinion is, I have to like roll with it and see what he does at the end of the day.
Yeah, and let's remember last year as well, Gene. I think you're 100% right. And to me, when guys like JTS and Anthony Nelson initially stepped in last year, when we had
Yeah.
the Cam Gill out for the year, we had Ryan Nassib keep getting hurt, or I'm sorry, Carl Nassib, Ryan
Oh,
Nassib,
nice.
old Syracuse quarterback. Carl Nassib, excuse me. He was banged up at times last year as well. And then Shaq Barrett essentially missed the second half of the season. So we were
Mm,
literally asking JTS and Anthony Nelson to
mm,
play every down, it seemed like at one point. And really, you can't have that happen. To me, when JTS stepped into a big role those first couple of games, he looked nice out there. Then you could tell
yeah.
he looked a little worn down and tired as the season
Mm,
came to a close. You
right.
can't really blame him. That's why I'm very excited for our edge room this year. I think
Oh, 100%.
we did a nice job of building it. Marquise Watts, Cam Gill's back. We drafted Yaya and Jose Ramirez. That's
Yeah.
how you build a team with edge depth, and that's what we did.
100%. And I want to apologize. I said 50,000. I meant 58,000 watts with my man Josh Watts. I love the pick. I love what he can do. I love what his potential is. I mean, again, I look at the history of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and you look at who's consistently been playing in these positions. And we went through a period, we had a bunch of bums that were on the edge. And that's all we had. But now we're in a position where we've had JPP come in here, which I'm glad you brought his name up. And I think that elevated everything. And I really believe that, when you've got a Vita Vea, that's your anchor right there. And then you
Hmm.
bring in a Kalijah Cansey, which we haven't seen his body of work. We haven't seen it start, but I really believe that this is a kid that's going to complement a Vita Vea. And this is what I'm hoping for. I've got both of my fingers crossed, my toes, and everything else. You got a Kalijah Cansey. If he can do half of the stuff that we dream that he can do,
Ooh.
this guy is going to be a monster. Playing next to Vita Vea. You know what that does? That opens up the floodgates of the heavens where you've got Shaq Barrett on one side, you got JTS on the other side. Somebody's getting home.
And imagine this next year, Gene. Just say everything pans out in Buckland next year, and say JTS and Logan Hall do take those second coming steps this year. I think
Mm-hmm.
JTS does more so than Hall. But imagine this future core seven for next year on the front line. You got Vita Vea, you
Yeah.
got Kalijah Cansey, you
Yeah.
got Logan Hall if he pans out. Then you
Mm-hmm.
got JTS and Shaq on the edges. And then say Devin White has a good year, pulls his head out of his bum attitude wise, and somehow stays here. You got Levante Devin, JTS Shaq, Logan Hall, Vita Vea, and Kalijah Cansey. It might not get much better than that if some of these guys pan out. I think JTS does. I'm hoping Logan Hall does. I'm hoping White turns it around, but the potential's there
Yeah.
for one of the better, if not best, front sevens in football.
200%, man. I totally agree with you. And I think I don't want anybody to fail. I'm going to put it that way. I wasn't comfortable with the pick that was made, but at the end of the day, the pick was made and I'm good with the pick. So, I want Logan Hall to succeed. And I don't want anybody to think anything otherwise. I want Logan Hall to just all of a sudden get it, understand the speed of the game and
Mm-hmm.
go hunting for the quarterback and be successful at what he does. That would make me happy just to see that, and we're not seeing a wasted pick. That's my hope. That's my goal. That's my dream right there. Is to see Logan Hall's name mentioned as a guy who's putting pressure on the quarterback, getting after the quarterback, stopping the run, or whatever his strength is right at this time, that's what I want to see. So I get it. People are frustrated. They're not seeing stuff happen right away. But you know what? It takes time. I've seen players that take 4 or 5 years before
Mhm.
they finally figure it all out, put it all together, and make it happen. That's the beauty of having a general manager and a head coach that can see potential. They can see things that we as fans, we as listeners, we as people on social media that are watching this stuff, we can't see this stuff. But they may see something in this guy. They may see habits that he has, and they're like, you know what? We can build off of this. We can make this better. We can utilize this guy and get him in a position to be successful. And that's what we have to be looking at.
Gene, you said it beautifully, and I'm going to bring up two long tenured Bucks to the table that fit that description to a T. If we gave up on them too soon, they would be down and out. Remember Jamel Dean's first game against the Seahawks
I
when
remember that.
he
They
got
wanted to they wanted to launch his ass into the sun.
Yeah, it was his first game starting, I should say. And, he got beat out there time and time again. Then the rest of his rookie season kind of looked ho-hum. If we based him just on that, everyone would want him gone. Remember how Will Golston started as a Buccaneers first year or
I
two?
remember.
You,
And it was just so crazy that, the Bucks kept him around. This is the guy that they were like, oh, he's not doing it. He's not going to do anything.
yeah, and then in a couple of years, he earned himself that 4-year, $33 million deal or whatever it was, and really became an essential part in the run game. And then over the past couple of years, he became a little bit of a better pass rusher as well. So to Gene's point, especially with the regime like the Bucks have proven that some of these cats could start off crawling slow, give them a couple of years, and sure, after 3 full years, if they don't look to play the part, then you could say, okay, maybe we missed the mark on this one. But until you get to that 3-year mark, I don't really think you could consider that for anyone unless they're off the team anymore, like a Jalen Arden and those kinds. Obviously, yes, you could say it for that. But, even some of these guys who aren't around the team anymore, Grant Stewart making the Indianapolis Colts roster.
Yeah.
He's a heck of a special teams guy. So just because guys might not look like they're that on the forefront, they could grow into quite the player over some years if you give them time and development.
I think we live in a Madden era where guys get drafted, guys get brought in, and you feel like, oh man, I'm playing this game. This is what this guy can do, or whatever. I really believe that, and this this may sound mean, but I really think that that's what it is. We live in a video game era where people feel like, oh, well, this guy got drafted here, so he needs to come in and contribute right away. It's not always the case. It's not always going to be the case. Some people do not adjust to the speed of the game at the same pace as other people do. So to me, and I think Will Golston is the gold standard of examples of a player that didn't come out on fire, but he caught fire as his career process.
Yeah, and even not saying even Vita Vea, right? Remember he got off to a little bit of a slow start.
Well,
He got off
that was all injury, but once he got out on the field, I mean,
he was a mammoth, a monster,
yeah.
and that's the one point we mentioned earlier. I love Bucks fans, but we use the word bust a little too loosely. You know what I'm saying?
It shouldn't. The word should not come up until after year 3. You should
Mm-hmm.
not be able to use the word bust on any player until after year 3.
I
Period.
agree because it's the NFL. You don't get a true evaluation on a guy. That's why it puzzles me. Not saying he's going to be great, but the fact that all Trey Lance could net was a 4th-round pick with how little we've seen, it kind of shocked me a little bit.
Well, I hate that he went to Dallas. Fuck Dallas. Just by the way,
Yep,
that's just
true.
my honest opinion right there.
I hate Dallas too, and Jerry Jones and everything.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at, man. And I do not. I hate that he went there because I was rooting for this kid. I wanted him to get somewhere where people would, have a little bit more patience with him and use him the way that we think that he could be used.
Mm-hmm. And Bud says OJ was a bust. Tell me I'm wrong. Well,
Right, and I'm not going to argue that. I really am not. I mean, I think he got cut from the Raiders here recently.
yeah, that's never a good sign. And when you can't really rebound with the Texans, I will say this about OJ Howard. he had a couple nice starts sprinkled in there, and then he did catch the injury bug. I'm not saying he wasn't a bust, because he
He
not.
he passed the eye test. You check up from the neck up. You check up from the neck up. If you got this guy, he's got that dog in him, and he's going to go out there and do what he needs to do. I just don't feel like OJ Howard's heart was in playing in the NFL. He had the
Bingo.
physical tools, had all the physical tools, but I just do not believe his heart was in it.
Bingo. I couldn't agree with you more. I feel like it was his heart that was, lacking a little bit for sure. And yes, everybody does have that miss here and there, like an OJ Howard, but he checked all the boxes. And when he played, you could tell why a team would take the risk to take him in the first round just by his physical attributes. But I don't think JTS is an OJ Howard. I really think he's going to pay dividends. And let's remember too, he was the last pick of a first round coming from the pack. And, I think he's really going to grow into his own, as Gene alluded to. I'm excited to see what JTS could do. And I'm really excited to see, what, like JC Allen alluded to, we've alluded to it. And guys, if Yaya Diaby's name isn't called the first couple weeks of the year, don't panic. Don't freak out. He was a mid-round pick. He's going to take a couple weeks to grow into his own, perhaps even a couple of years. So I'm
Yeah.
really excited to see what Yaya Diaby could do as well.
That's one of the things that I was talking about. What the Buccaneers have done in this offseason, just getting players that the rest of the NFL, all 31 other teams, guys that they're not even looking at. And then when you look at these guys that got signed to the practice squad, the NFL is still not looking at these kids.
Mm-mm.
So these are guys that I'm sure you have to have some kind of chip on your shoulder. If you think you belong in the NFL and all these guys passed on you, um, just like my man, 58,000 watts, he's like, he didn't want to go anywhere else. He wanted to stay in Tampa. This is a guy that can, potentially, and I hate that word, especially when it comes to Tampa, potential. But I think that, 58,000 watts, he can come in here and do it, I believe this is a guy that his heart is in it. He wants to show what he can do. He wants to prove all the naysayers wrong. That's the kind of player you want right there. You want somebody who's hungry, who's going to come in and do what he needs to do. And again, I talk about body of work. You've heard me say this throughout the show. You look at what these undrafted free agents were doing. You look at these free agents and NFL free agents were doing before they came to Tampa, and the Bucs have missed on so many players, going all the way back to that idiot Bruce Allen. From Bruce Allen to just to right up to Jason Light, there have been so many picks that have just been missed. So many opportunities have been wasted, and now here you are. And again, Bucs fans are spoiled by this. And I'm going to prove this to you this season because I believe that Tampa is in a great position to win some games that a lot of people aren't expecting them to win.
Yeah, and we went over it a little bit as well. Their schedule, just the appeal of their schedule is great. And I really think when you break it down, Chicago week 2, very winnable game. Even at Minnesota week 1, winnable game right there. So you break it down, I think they have at least a chance at 1, if not 2 wins the first couple weeks of the season.
Yeah. Real quick, I do got my man Joshua Cole Allen. I don't know what happened to JCA. He was just here just a second ago. What the hell?
He,
But
he needs to pay his Wi-Fi bill.
yeah, yeah, we're gonna get Joshua Cole Allen on from Pewter Report. Great wealth of knowledge there, and getting to know him from the beginning when he first started to where he is right now is really exciting to see how he's grown. I love, the fact that I personally know so many, a lot of these guys from Pewter Report. It has really drawn me to appreciate what they do and how they're bringing Bucks news. So shout out to Pewter Report. I don't know if they're listening. Probably not listening to somebody a peasant like myself, but I must say that I do appreciate the content that they're putting out because at the end of the day, Tampa Bay sports media, it's kind of hit and miss. But I can tell you right now, with a team like what Pewter Report has, I appreciate them and the level of talent that they bring to that to really cover the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And speaking of, I think we got Joshua Cole Allen on now. What's going on, brother?
What's up, guys? How we doing?
Good, good. And I know you were talking about Yaya Diaby, and I really want you to kind of share what your thoughts are with the fans, just so they have an understanding of what we can potentially expect, with the season starting.
With Yaya Diaby or just in general?
Yeah, we'll start with Yaya Diaby because I know you had mentioned him in the chat, and I know that there are a lot of fans that aren't familiar with him and what his ceiling is or what his floor is and what he could potentially bring to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah, so he's extremely hard worker. Started off at Georgia Military before he went over to Louisville, and that work ethic carried through over, and you can see it with the Bucs as well. I mean, this draft class was particularly, there were two things they were looking for: really athleticism and intelligence. And all these guys are smart guys. They're hard workers. It says a lot about this group that they're rolling with 13 rookies, 6 of them undrafted, on this active roster. These guys picked up the playbook quick, and they're able to go out there and kind of play free and fast. And one of the things with Yaya is he's just got this athletic ability that just jumps off the charts, right? I think he ran a 4.48 or something like that, 40 time, extremely fast. He's built like an action figure. Guy's just huge. He's jacked compared to Shaq. He looks giant. He looks like a giant. And him and JTS, I mean, if those guys are lined up across from each other at any point in their career, they're going to form a formidable duo. He's still got to work on some hand placement technique and stuff like that. But as far as pure athleticism, pure ability to get after the passer, he has it in droves. He's a physical hitter. And he's going to bring a different attitude, I feel like, to that rotation. Obviously, they're going to have Shaq in there across from JTS, and they'll have Anthony Nelson. But it wouldn't surprise me in the least to see Yaya Diaby first off the bench over Anthony Nelson, just because of his physical ability and gifts that he has as a pass rusher.
So, while I have you, because I know you've gotten to go to some practices, and again, you have to take practices with a grain of salt. But is there one player on this roster that you're looking at as a guy that fans really need to keep their eye on? Who would that be?
There's a few of them. I think there's some of the obvious, right? Sean Tucker. I think he's a guy that he's going to be running RB2. I know if you want to get technical and go to the Bucks team depth chart on their website, it shows him as RB4, but he's going to be RB2, and he's got that speed and that vision that allows him to just kick it to another level. And we saw that on display a few times, even in the preseason games. Raheem Jarrett is another one. I know everyone's talking about Trey Palmer, rightfully slow. He's looked great, but I think Raheem Jarrett's gonna really open people's eyes, and that's one of the reasons why they only went with five wide receivers there. On the defensive side, I'm really high on Christian Izien. He's a little ball of lightning out there. He reminds me, his play style reminds me of Antoine Winfield Jr., and he's had that comparison for quite a while now. His coach in college at Rutgers was Antoine Winfield Jr.'s coach, so he studied a lot of his film, and I think them giving him that first crack at the starting nickel cornerback is going to be great for his development, and also it just works well because you have D. Delaney there who has taken some of those first team reps, but he's A1,
Yeah,
when
exactly.
anyone goes down in that secondary, he's going to be that guy. And if Winfield Jr. can't go this week, he's going to be the start at free safety. If someone goes down at strong safety, outside cornerback, D. Delaney is that guy. So getting Christian Izzy in those early reps and say, all right, let's see what you got, because if not, we're going to have to look outside or we're going to have to put D. Delaney in there. I think it's going to be really great for him. I'm excited about Marquise Watts, too. The guy just knows how to get in the backfield. And I know you guys are talking about Logan Hall, but I really, Logan Hall, from what we saw, he had 2 really good reps, and then he had a bad rep. But you're not going to
Yeah,
win every rep. But
right.
those are really his first time kind of playing next to Vita Vea, and Kalijah Cansey's not even there yet. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for his growth and development. And Joe Tronshenko, he gets a lot of flack, and rightfully so a little bit. He missed a few sacks last year, didn't wrap up. But if you look at his situation where he came in as a rookie, he didn't play in 2020 because of COVID. His rookie year,
Right.
he played out of position because they were playing an injured JPP over him all the time. And then last year, he finally starts to kind of get settled in, and then Shaq Barrett goes down for the year. So now people aren't I love Nelly. I love Anthony Nelson. People aren't game planning to take Anthony Nelson away at all.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
all that extra help went over to JTS's side, which made his job even more, difficult. So I'm expecting a big thing from him as well.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. Just because I know what he could potentially, and I hate that word potential, especially with the Buccaneers, but what we've seen him go through his journey in the NFL, I have high expectations for him this year. Just based on what he's done and how he's progressed. I mean, he's got this close, and you get sick of saying, "Oh man, he was this close." But I think that he's adjusted to the speed of the game. I think this is a season where he could have a breakout season. I
Yeah.
really do. With the healthy Shaq Barrett, who by the way, I was not expecting Shaq Barrett until week
No.
6, week
No.
6 or week 7. I was not even. He was not on my. If you go back and watch the show, I have never mentioned Shaq Barrett before week 6, and the fact that he's going out there doing what he's doing is a testament to this man, and just the medical staff and just everybody that has contributed to him getting
Right.
back on the field as quickly as he has.
The fact that it didn't start the training camp on the PUP list was in itself something that was like
Unreal.
like Achilles is no joke. And the biggest thing that I looked for with Shaq was the speed gone, because that's the first thing that goes in an Achilles.
Right.
Is it's hard to get that speed in. It's still there. I mean, he's still working it. So I've been impressed by Shaq, his resiliency, especially going through the traumatic thing that he had to go through, and him and his family, to be able
Yeah.
to still work as hard as he did to get back to where he is, where he's going to be the starter week 1, is just nothing short of
Unreal.
amazing.
Real quick, and I'm going to pass it over to Tampa Tones here real quick. But just with Kalijah Cansey, what, if any, are any takeaways that you have of your exposure to him this, going into the preseason?
Oh man, just before he got injured, like jaw dropping. Like his speed, his athleticism, his bend is as advertised. I think he's going to be such an impactful player on this team. Even if he doesn't rack up the sacks, like I know a lot of people want those guys to rack up sacks.
Dude, and I'll say this right here real quick. I'm going to interject this here. Sacks are sexy, but I would take a pressure over a sack any day.
Right. So, I mean, the thing about sacks, go back to Warren Sapp, Gerald McCoy, the list goes, Vita Vea, the list goes on. Those guys didn't have over 3 sacks in their career, 3.5 sacks in their first rookie season. None of them did. You look at Logan Hall for all the flack that he got. He had 2.5 sacks last year, which was more than Devontae Wyatt and Jordan Davis, the 2 Georgia guys, got combined. So, I mean, it is what it is. But as far as Kalijah Cansey, the biggest thing he's going to provide, because Vita's going to eat up those double teams, and it's going to allow Kalijah Cansey to really kind of use his abilities to disrupt that backfield. Vita will be back there too, as well. But what it's going to do is it's going to funnel these guys out to the side. It's going to make quarterbacks move out of the pocket, step up into the pocket where Vita's collapsing it, or move outside of the pocket where hopefully Joe Tryon-Sharenka or Shaq are going to be there like Journey with open arms, ready to take those guys down. So like I think that's gonna be huge. And what I've seen out of Kalijah Cansey, the reason why you talked to Jason Light today, you talked to Todd Bowles today, they're excited about this guy because of the game changing presence he can have, just by causing pressure himself, whether it's not a sack, but creating those opportunities for everybody else. We know how exotic, Bowles likes to get blitzing, with Devin White, with the safeties, with the nickels. There's going to be a lot of, I think this Bucs team, and I'm giving you a little preview of my first article that I'll be having at my new outlet. But I think this Bucs defense, one of my bold predictions this year, is that they're going to be top 5 in sacks this season.
Yeah. So I do have a question. G Vegas, a longtime listener. I love G Vegas, but I have to disagree with this. He talks about sacks give you the big contract. You don't get paid for almost getting the job done. when you're getting pressure on the quarterback, and general managers understand this, head coaches, defensive coordinators understand this. When you're putting pressure on a quarterback, he can't scan the field. He can't identify who he's going to. He can't look for hot routes and stuff like that if he's pressured and he has to come out of the pocket and he's uncomfortable. You can't. I guess the biggest part of this, you can't scan the field. There's just no way you can do it.
Pressures lead to errant throws, and errant throws and pressure and errant throws lead to interceptions. So
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest benefactors of pressures. Obviously, sacks are great because they end it down and back you up, and those are great in their own right too. But if you're getting consistent pressure, just watch Quarterback on Netflix with Kirk Cousins. You know, if you're continuously getting after the guy and maybe not sacking him but hitting him, knocking him down to the ground, that does mess with people's psyche. I mean, Sam Darnold, you know, classic Sam Darnold. I'm seeing ghosts out there. You know, if you're getting distant pressure where you're in the quarterback's face and causing him to throw the ball quicker than he wants to, or, you know, make errant passes, that increases, especially with these two cover corners, if they stay healthy, it's going to make it a world of pain. Now, I don't expect them to come down with many interceptions because Carlton and Jamel have
it's going to
hands, but
it's going to help it's going to help the defense as a whole.
Absolutely.
And that's why I go back to what I was saying. Sacks are sexy. Believe me, I'm not against sacks. They look good. When you get one, you get one. But if you're putting pressure on a quarterback and he's having to speed up his clock is 1,000 to 1,000, but now his clock is 1,000, and he's got to find somebody to get the ball out, or he's got to figure out what he needs to do. That changes his perception of this defense.
Right.
So to me, I get what people are saying. Sacks are beautiful. You can get one, get on ESPN or CBS Sports or whatever. It looks good. But at the end of the day, if you're getting home and you're bumping that quarterback, or you're knocking him down, or you're making him force throws out, that's equally as successful as getting a sack, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's up there. I mean, again, sack puts you in down and distance, you know. So but if you're consistently getting pressures, those pay dividends in the long run.
100%.
If you don't mind, there was a few questions I just want to answer.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So Josh Hayes was the first one. Josh Hayes definitely got my attention on special teams. He's the first team gunner across from Zion McCollum. So, I mean, I think he's got a little bit ways to go as far as development, but he's a versatile piece. You can use at nickelback. You can use at cornerback. He did play some safety at Kansas State too. So he's one of those guys that are going to continue to develop. It's not like a right away thing for him, but I think he'll play a big role on special teams. And then the other question just was what gave Tucker the edge over Edmonds. I think just Tucker's natural ability, his speed, the juice he brings. They'll have plenty of packages for Edmonds. He's going to be more of that Giovanni Bernard role, 2-minute, third down passing back, etc. Now, all these guys, I mean, even Edmonds have proven they can be 3-down backs. Sean Tucker, obviously not at the NFL level, but at the collegiate level he has. They're all really good pass protectors. They all can catch the ball in the backfield, and they all can run the ball. So there's going to be opportunities for all of them. Sean Tucker will just be the first guy off the bench to spell Rachaad White.
Real quick, I just want to kind of jump in here. Folks, everybody's got their guy that they like. But trust me when I say this, 17 games in the NFL season, your guy will get out on the field. Your guy will get opportunities.
Unless you keep on.
Just God forbid no injuries. I'm just saying your guy will get out there. So and to kind of piggyback off of what JCA is saying, these guys are fluidly catching the ball. I mean, we saw Ronald Jones, and we were just cringing every time this guy caught the ball, and how hard it was. But now you've got three guys that can fluidly. It's not like it's a lot of work. They are fluidly catching the ball, making their play, and moving upfield. It's not the same as what we've had in the past. And I think Bucs fans are going to be spoiled by this too, because you've got not one, but you've got three guys that can catch the ball consistently, and they all have nice hands, and they are going to make plays.
Yeah, and this offense is going to be about getting the ball quick, right? You're not going to hold on the ball. They want the ball out with 2.7 seconds. Get that ball out quick. And when it's not there, you look at the different offensive scheme, different offensive system. But last year, Rachaad White had 50 catches, and Leonard Fournette had 78 catches. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities for these guys, the running backs, to make plays, out of the backfield as a receiver. So, yes, I'll say it. Giovanni Bernard.
Thank you.
Oh,
Tampa
gee.
Zones, I got to get you in here, man. You've been kind of quiet over there, bro.
Yeah, JC, great to talk to you, brother. As
Always.
always, my man. Great to see you. Well, to see your face at least on the little bubble there. But I have a practice squad question, and it's obviously tough making these decisions. But we've seen the Bucks kind of go in a different direction at wide receiver, at least on the practice squad. We knew David Moore would stick around at some capacity, and Cephas makes sense as well, as he kind of brings that mobile presence. If you want to run a wildcat or something tricky on a mobile quarterback in practice, he could be that guy more so. But Ryan Miller, I like the kid. What gave him the edge, in your opinion, over the likes of Kalen Geiger, Tay Barber, Cade Warner, and some of these other young wide receivers that we've seen battling out for either the practice squad or depth? What made Ryan Miller catch the Bucks' eyes? And do you think he'll stick around on the practice squad like Tompkins and Geiger did last season, or do you think it'll be a fluid situation?
No, I think they really liked Ryan Miller. Early on in camp, Ryan Miller was in the end zone catching everything. He had a couple struggles, and obviously he had that big drop in the end zone in the last preseason game. But you're talking about, this is a guy who's playing the position for the first time. He was a tight end all through college.
Yep.
So he's making that switch, and he's just showed the smarts, the instincts, the athleticism, the ability to really absorb the playbook and know what he's doing. They really liked him a lot, and he was always in their plans to bring back. That was one of the first guys that, besides David Moore, because David Moore was one of those guys I heard about like early in training camp, that if David Moore doesn't make and that was with Russell Gage still there. If David Moore doesn't make the top 6, he's going to be on the practice squad as that veteran guy, and David Moore might be called up sooner rather than later as well. But as far as Ryan Miller, yeah, they really liked his intelligence. They liked his work ethic. They liked his athleticism. They liked the fact that he's he's not a big guy, but he plays big as well, being a former tight end at the collegiate level. And Cephas, they like Cephas too. Big thing about Cephas is his height. He's 6'4". He's the only other, tall receiver on this roster other than Mike Evans. And he's going to provide them a lot of good scout team looks when they're going up against tall receivers. So you had to have someone with some height on that practice squad, and Cephas fit the bill. They liked what he did in the short stint that he was there. He was only there for about 2 weeks. That was enough for them to want to kind of develop him a little bit further and see what they have out of him, and also utilize him, as a scout team wide receiver. But I mean, that whole situation be fluid. I think David Moore is the only guy who will really stick around the entire season if he's not called up to the 53. They might, injuries might happen, and they might feel like they need to upgrade their practice squad with a veteran guy if one comes available. So, those practice squads are usually pretty fluid, bottom of the roster pretty fluid throughout the year. So it will be interesting to see if they stick to those guys. But I do know they're really excited, especially about Ryan Miller and developing him.
Nice.
Yeah, real quick here. One other quick question on offense. Me and you were fans of Ronnie Brown, but to me it was pretty simple. They went with Pat Laird, most likely for veteranship, as you have a young backfield with the likes of Tucker and Rashad White. I know you have Edmonds there, but Vaughn's pretty young as well. Was that the ultimate decision, the veteranship of Laird over Brown, or does this regime just like Laird more as he was around last year for familiarity as well?
I think not so much for familiarity, but I just feel like he's got the experience, right? Step in. He's a very fluid back. He was good in Miami when he was down there. Obviously, he can hurdle people. No, that's not that's not a reason why. But at the end of the day, he was just ahead of Ronnie Brown on the depth chart. And Ronnie, he looked good in his few appearances that he made, especially that last preseason game where he had that nice long run. But he faced an uphill battle from the get-go, coming from Shepherd, a Division II school. And I feel like they just felt like if they're going to have someone on the practice squad, Ronnie Brown wasn't one of these guys that had long-term potential as a developmental guy. So you go with the veteran there that, knows how to practice, knows how to run the scout team. It's not someone that you have to kind of break in and say, okay, this is what we're doing. Patrick Laird's been there. He's been a scout team running back. He knows the system now, and he knows the kind of role that he's going to be asked to play on the practice squad. So I think that was just part of the decision there.
Real quick, I do want to jump in here. Somebody was asking about the Ryan Jensen restructure, and I think his base salary was sitting at 10 million, and they dropped it down to 1.075 million. And I think it created like $6.8 million in cap space for the team. Is that accurate, or can
That's
you
going to be
confirm
for
that?
that cap space will be for next year. So
That'll be towards next year.
Okay. They haven't got any cap relief. They do need to open up some cap space here. Prior to next Thursday. They will have to open up cap space prior to next Thursday. So there's literally 4 moves they can make, and that's it. There's no other moves outside of those 4 that they can make.
So is that like a Mike Evans or a?
The first one is the one that everyone is hoping for, right? A Mike Evans extension. Extend the man, keep him here long term. The second one is a restructure. The reason why you don't want to do a restructure with Mike Evans because you're pushing money into the future. If you're going to be paying the man anyways, you want to pay the man and push the money that you're paying him into the future. You don't want to push money in the future and then re-sign him. Now you can work the cap so that cap hit next year would be around 20 something million, almost $30 million, somewhere around there. You can rework the cap where you sign him to an extension in the offseason. But you'd have to get that extension done prior to the league year starting. So the best thing to do right there is to just extend him, lock him up for the foreseeable future. The next one is something that we all know is not going to happen, and that is extending or restructuring Devin White. They're not touching his salary. Not after this last season. I don't believe they're going to touch his salary at all. You're not going to push money into the future for Devin White just in case he has a big year and decides he doesn't want to sign here. And if he does have that season and you want him here, he's got to prove it this season before you give him that extension. The final one is the restructure Shaq Barrett. The thing about that is you're pushing money down the line for Shaq. And while he looks great, how does he hold up in a 17-game season? He's also on the wrong side of 30. Do you really want to push more of his money down the line? So I know they're working diligently with Mike and his camp. You can't imagine that the numbers are too far off. He's probably looking for a little bit more than Chris Godwin. I wouldn't say a lot more. He's not looking for this $27-30 million. I don't think. Mike just gave away $157 million in scholarships. He's not, I mean, $157,000 in scholarships. He's not someone who's looking to, he's not a money guy. He's not a
I think these are his roots. So I think Tampa are his roots.
I think if anything, they're talking more about years. Mike probably wants to be locked up for 3 to 4 years. They're probably looking at a 2 to 3 years, and then probably guaranteed money, and how that's paid out throughout those years. That's always the thing. But I wouldn't be surprised if something came up with Mike and them by next Thursday. If not, they'll restructure Shaq Barrett, even though they don't want to.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say this. I mean, all these idiots that keep reporting that Mike Evans is going to get traded.
Oh yeah,
it's gotten annoying. I think it started like maybe 3 years ago when the New York Jets fans, for whatever unknown, I don't even know where this came from. They're like, oh, that the Bucs are going to trade draft picks to the New York Jets. It's never been on the table.
The problem is right now is that with it's mostly coming from outsiders. It's not coming from anyone who's in the Tampa Bay area, especially not the Tampa Bay media, or someone who actually reads and follows any of the Tampa Bay media websites. So it's coming from other people who are looking at the Bucs situation, who don't realize, just listen to the national narrative, who don't realize the talent that the Bucs still have on this roster, how much Mike means and how much Mike wants to be here. And they're just looking like, well, the Bucs are going to start tanking for Caleb Williams. They're going to suck this year. You might as well start offloading pieces, and a 30-year-old receiver, is someone that you need to offload. And that's the perspective they're looking at it. And in most instances, they would probably be right, but they don't know about the inner working, the front office, and they really don't know. They don't know about this team. They don't know what to expect about this team because they're just being fed stuff they're hearing on, BSPN and all these other sites there.
And I have to say this, man. People like yourself, people like the Buccaneers, all these different podcasts. This is where I get a lot of my information from you. I follow you religiously. Pewter Report, you guys are a lifesaver. uh, Greg Allman. Greg Allman, another guy who's just
Yep.
amazing at what he does. You guys are the real assets of the Tampa Bay area. And the one thing that I can say is when you're this invested and you follow all these different entities, you get a better idea of what's going on with Tampa. And then you look outside of this, and which is why I don't really watch like your 4-letter network or your 3-letter networks,
Mhm.
is because they have narratives. They have this script that they have to follow. These are the storylines that, like a soap opera of some
It's tough
sort.
too because most of those guys they're not dialed into the team. They're not
They don't
talking
care. They
to
they don't
front
care until
office.
it's yeah.
They're just looking at it from an outsider perspective, looking at oh Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield, and then they're making assumptions without digging deeper, or some of these guys are smart and like you look at the Peter Schrager's of the world and the Kyle
Yeah.
Brandts of the world and some of those
Right.
guys. They read Peter Report stuff. They read Rick Stroud and Greg Allman stuff. So they're
Mm,
dialed in when they come to talk about the Bucs. They're not just looking at a depth chart
mm,
and just spewing whatever narrative they want to put. They're actually reading the stuff that we're putting out there, and they won't mention us directly in their reports or on screen, but that's where they're getting their information from. So that's why
yeah.
when you look at some of these guys out there, even a Dan Orlovsky, he's got
Right.
narratives too. But he just came out talking about Baker Mayfield and the whole Bucks thing being
Mm,
widely underrated right now, and
mm,
it's because they're a little bit more dialed in as
mm.
far as they're actually doing the research. Pat McAfee is another one. He reads Peter Report all the time.
Yeah.
So
I
they're
love
dialed
Pat
in.
McAfee, by the way. I really
Mhm.
do. I think that this is a guy that he gets it. And it's not about narratives for him. He's looking around the NFL, and he's been accurate on a lot of stuff that he's reported.
Mm.
Yep.
Whereas, you have a lot of guys that, they have these fancy studios and, they're on cable networks and what have you. And they press these narratives that are not even accurate, not even close to accurate. But guys like I was listening to Bucketeers before our show started. I listened to Pewter Report. I listened to you, and you guys get it. But you're invested in this community,
Well, those
and
guys
that's
got it.
yeah. and
Stay
those are
tuned
the
to
things.
where I'm at tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And again, stay tuned, folks. If you're not following Joshua Cole Allen, please do. The Bucketeers, like and subscribe. These are entities, and I'm going to try to get JCA on a little bit more often. Just I appreciate what you guys bring to the Bay Area, to the people that listen to me, the people that trust me. I want to get the most accurate people that I can on here, and that's why I appreciate you guys both coming on here, because you're not like jumping out the window and you're putting all these crazy ideas out there, but you're like grounded and you realize that there will be some things that the Bucs are going to deal with. There will be road bumps along the road, but still, this is where you get your information from.
I agree with you, Gene. And I think as far as McAfee goes, I think he does it smart. He actually has legit sources. AQ Shipley dialed in with the team the past couple of seasons. He goes to things like that. A lot of the national media doesn't dig their teeth in that much, more clickbait. So kudos to guys like McAfee and those big dogs for staying above it. And then kudos to the podcast like Buck What You Heard and the rest of the gang as well for just really actually giving you a local, real perspective on what's going on with the team.
Yep.
All right. Well, guys, we have been on here. I can't believe we've been on here almost 2 hours. This has just been fun talking football. This is where we're getting ready. The rubber's about to hit the road. We're going to see what this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team is going to do. And, Joshua Cole Allen, shout out to Joshua Cole Allen for taking time to jump on. Let me get your
Absolutely.
final thoughts here, bro, and we're going to roll out of here.
Yeah. So final thoughts are: I think this team is being severely underrated. Listen, you guys know I'm not from here. I have no allegiances to the Bucks, no allegiances to Tampa. I try to offer an unbiased, opinion in my work and my tweets, everything that I do. I'm really excited for this team. I think that um, Baker's being severely overlooked. I think this offensive line, while young and while there are question marks on that right side, I think they're really going to shock a lot of people. While how good they play. Now, again, that week 4 bye week is a killer, or week 5 bye week is a killer, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's early in the season, but it's also very place in a time in the season where these guys will be able to self-scout themselves and correct what needs to be corrected to make that stretch run. I'll save my score prediction, but I do have them with a winning record this year, winning the NFC South. I think that when you look at Baker, where he has excelled in his career, that 2020 season when he was fully healthy, which he is now, in a similar derivative style of this Shanahan offense, lit the league on fire, and was literally a defensive stop on Chad Henne running play on fourth down away from going to the AFC Championship game. And I think that the way this offense is set up with the weapons he has, they're going to be in a good position. So I'm excited for this season. I'm excited for the Bucs fans to have this season. And look, I think you're in a win-win scenario, right? This team does tank and just stinks. You're going to be in the running for one of these top quarterbacks, and that changes direction of your franchise. If Baker Mayfield goes out there as a real deal and leads them to a playoff game, playoff win, and then comes back and gets a 3-year contract for $75 million, you're in a good position either way. Because that means that everything went according to plan. So it's going to be a fun season. We're a little bit over a week away, less than a week away, a full week away from the season actually starting. And I'm excited for this season, guys. I appreciate you having me on here. You guys, all the viewers, if you're not following me already, follow me on Twitter at JCLNFL. Big news! I just left Pewter Report today. I'll be starting with another outlet tomorrow, on the 1st of September. I'll have that news for you guys tomorrow sometime. Really excited about the opportunity. Very, appreciative of Scott Reynolds over at Pewter Report, the guys, the staff, everyone I've learned from. From Josh Capo with his cap stuff and his film breakdown to Matty Matera and especially John Ledyard. But it was time for a change and time for something exciting and to be part of something, to build something and kind of make it my own. I'm really excited for it, and you guys will find out more information on that tomorrow.
Dude, you will always be part of the Buck community. I remember when you got your start. I remember you before your start, and I appreciate everything you've done. Again, guys, if you're not following Joshua Cole Allen, please catch up with him. He's a great follow on Twitter, or excuse me, the artist formerly known as Twitter, known as X now. That's where you can follow him at. So, and my next guy, Tampa Tones, a guy long overdue to have you on. This was an amazing show. Thank you so much. And to all the listeners of the Bucketeers, thank you for taking time to join in and join in the chat. The chat's been lit tonight, and I appreciate all you guys. Tampa Tones, tell everybody how they can get a hold of you, and let me get your final thoughts.
Yeah, it's been really fun here, Gene. It's always a blast with you, my man. It's really incredible to meet people like you over time on the platform known as X, I guess you can call it. But really just a blessing getting to meet guys like yourself and JC. So I'm honored to be on Buck What You Heard. Back in the Super Bowl run, my pops was calling in the show. My brother was calling in the show. Your show, Buck What You Heard. So you've really done a lot for the Bucks community. I mean, you had non-Bucks fans calling in, so it was really incredible. So always an honor to be here talking with you. You can keep up with me at Tampa Tones on Twitter, and then you can keep up with the pod at Bucketeers on Twitter as well. Same spelling as Buccaneers, but swap out.
I'll be there soon.
For T. JC will be there soon. Gene will be there soon as well. Both of you guys will be there. And JC, it's really been a blessing, man. I remember on Friday nights you had the Audible with Joshua Allen Cole on or Joshua Cole Allen, I'm sorry, on Bucks Report. You blast him that Pewter Report. Now, when you're covering Jameis in New Orleans, you're going to do beautiful things.
Wow! Shots fired! Shots fired right there.
Just always beautiful, fellas. Gene, JC, you guys are the best, man. I love being a part of it.
After that.
Hey, just real quick, I do want to give a shout out, heartfelt. My thoughts go out to everybody in the Bay Area with this hurricane that passed through and the damage that was done. And I don't want you guys to think that I am not thinking about the people that have suffered from the flooding or whatever damage has come to your home or what have you. I'm thinking about you because I've been there. And I love you guys. And I know that we're Tampa strong. We're Florida strong. We'll get through this. and just hang in there. We are thinking about you. I'm donating, where I can,
Mhm.
but I just want you guys to know that I am thinking about my people in Florida, especially from such a catastrophic event. And just know that this hurricane season, unfortunately, is we're at the peak right now. So I'm keeping my eye on these storms. I do care about you guys, and I do think about you guys. So
Well said.
um, for
Yep.
me, because I've been through, I don't know how many hurricanes I've been through, but I've got grandkids and kids that are, there in the line of fire. And, again, not just because of them, but everybody, just the people that, if you don't think that, nobody's paying attention, I am paying attention to
Mhm.
the losses that people are suffering here, and it doesn't go unnoticed. So you guys hang in there. I think the one thing that we all have in common, we have a football team that we can all rally around, and these are things that kind of take your mind off of the regular world. And just know that regardless of, I don't get involved with political differences or any of that other BS.
Mhm.
I care about people. We're all Americans here, and this is where we are. We've got a team that we can all rally behind, and I love you guys.
We love you too, Gene, and that was well said. That's the beautiful
Well
thing
said.
about sports, man. When you're at that stadium, nothing else matters but
Yeah,
football. Hope everyone toughed out the hurricane. Prayers are out to everybody.
yeah. All right, guys. Well, this is it for me. I'm going to get out of here. We will be back here next Thursday. I'm doing this I moved from Wednesday to Thursday. I don't really care about Thursday night football unless the Bucs are playing. I really don't care about it. I wish they'd do away with it and go back to Monday, Sunday night, and Sunday. I'm good with that, but again, I don't know. I don't think that'll happen. But I will be doing, on Thursday nights if the Bucs are playing. I will just like have the game up. I will be doing commentary. You will see that, but again, just everybody, let's all band together. We're all Bucs fans here, and I love you guys, and we are out of here.